And welcome to DeepDive Talent Insights and Analytics channel. This is I Think I Love My Job. Hi, and welcome to I Think I Love My Job. Thank you for coming back. Or if this is your first time. If you don't know me, I am Dr. Kalifa Oliver, the resident expert in all things employee experience here at DeepDive. What are we going to talk about today? Culture. Shall we? So in the context of the employee experience, culture is very similar as an outcome variable. And we talk about culture a lot. And so in this sense, we're talking about culture as an organizational culture as opposed to country or market or the culture of an area or geographical region. We're talking about what is the culture of the organization. The culture of the organization is something that there should be a thread running across different divisions and departments and locations and municipalities, etc., and countries. There's a thread that's running and underlies the values of the organization, and culture is more so about how those values are put into action and what sustains. So in a lot of my experience, I've found that there's always this really weird disconnection between how leaders see culture and how, people working the day-to-day, the front line, middle managers, that's how they see it a little bit differently, or a lot of it differently. And it's always interesting to me how far that gap can be, and how deep and how wide, and how much it could create such toxicity and resentment, because that gap exists. And so I'm here to tell you that there is a misconception organizationally about culture. There tends to be a general belief that culture starts at the top. So people at the top set culture. And that's just what a culture is. You have your value proposition, you have your values, you have what your articles of association, etc. say. This is what our culture is. This is what we think our culture is. This is what we're promoting as our culture. I'm here to tell you that you could write all of that, you can espouse all of that, you could say that, you could put it in emails, logos, stamps, shareholder packets, but culture is at the bottom. Culture starts at the bottom. Culture can be designed and advocated at the top and enforced even at the top. But culture is a bottom-up process. If the culture that you write and you say you have is not reflected in the day-to-day actions of your employees, then all you have are ideas and theories and constructs. You don't have a culture. You could say you have the best, most progressive culture ever, but if your actions and the actions of your employees don't align with that, then if toxicity is what people see, if that's what it is, then that's your culture, whether you are willing to admit it or not. And the first step is just to admit that there is a problem in your culture. And if you're not sure what your culture is, it means you're not listening. It means you've taken no steps to really listen to what your culture is, because it's hard sometimes, right, to understand that there's a disconnect between what you think and what people around you are telling you is your culture, and how people are actually behaving and how it aligns with your culture. And many organizations have been really hurt, really reputationally damaged, because their culture, the culture that they say they have, just doesn't align with actions that are taken by their frontline employees or by decisions made or words said by leaders. As a leader, you can set your culture. You can say, this is my ambition, and this is what I want us to be, and this is what I want us to take steps and actions to become. And it has to be pervasive enough to be sure that it reaches and touches everybody in your organization, but it also manifests itself in action. And if it's not manifesting itself in action, then you have to take steps to correct it. And sometimes that means there are people in your organization who need to go. The disconnect in culture by thinking that what you say is your culture and what your culture is perceived as, that gap is dangerous to organizations. It can destroy your organizational reputation. It can be the driving force that attracts the people that you get to your organization. And toxic cultures not just attract toxic people, but toxic people are willing to stay in a place where toxicity thrives. That's just the truth. Toxic people get smothered in positive and progressive and functioning cultures. Because people don't feed in to the toxicity, they don't feed in to the bad behaviors and the counterproductive work behaviors. They stand up to it, they push against it. Culture is affected by what is rewarded. And so if you reward bad behavior, even unintentionally, that's what your culture is going to be. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to build. And people are going to start learning that this is what is rewarded, right? And so we have to be really careful, like when we look at rewards and we look at recognition, that we're not rewarding behaviors that actually, well, you're not rewarding an action that really is a bad behavior that is creating that. So this is usually very, very, very more clearly seen when a reward is monetary. So like you're given bonuses for, let me give you bonus X because you have produced this number of sales, right? But then the question is, if you are doing this many sales, what are you doing to do it? And sometimes people are cheating to get there, and it can hurt your customers, it can hurt your clients. But the problem was that you were rewarding that behavior. So you are in policy rewarding the sales, right? Or the meeting of goals. But what everybody else is seeing is you're rewarding the bad behavior that it took to produce it. So while you are rewarding this, you are actually creating a situation where you are really promoting the counterproductive or negative behavior, and that is going to start driving your culture. Honestly, by the time a lot of organizations see that they have a problem in their culture, it's too late. By the time it manifests, that's been there for a while, and you got so much work to do and you have so much transformation to do. The other thing is when you're trying to drive a culture. So the other thing is when you're trying to drive a culture within your organization, you have to also live and act in that culture. So you have to be very careful of what you say. And when I say be careful, I'm saying, yes, you can repeat and repeat and repeat, these are the cultures. You can put it in every email, these are the cultures, these are our vision, these are our values, etc. But then if you go and do something that's very outside of that, or say something that's very outside of that, always remember your employees are looking, and they're not stupid, and they're taking the message that you're not saying. I always tell people, be aware of what people aren't saying to you. And I'm not talking about body language. I'm talking about there's a message you're sending in doing something that's contrary to what you're saying, and that's the message people are taking. Children are amazing at that, right? Picking up those behaviors that we think they can't see. And this is how it works in everyday relationships. And so when we talk about culture, it sustains over time, but know that cultures change over time, and know that when a culture grows over time, to fix a culture takes a good bit of time too, and it takes investment, and sometimes it's a hard ship to turn around, but commitment and true action and really looking at your reward structures, listening continuously to your organization, pivoting when necessary, can really help you with your culture. But I'm here to make sure and make clear that you understand that culture is driven at the bottom. It is a bottom-up process. The mistake a lot of organizations make is believing it is a top-down process. It's not. The top can say it and set it. The top can reinforce it with their behaviors and their actions and their words. But your culture is driven by everybody else. What are your people managers doing? What are your individual contributors doing? What are your frontline workers doing? What are you telling your clients? That's where your culture is. So, your employee experience feeds into your culture. Think about that. So that is it about culture. And again, culture, it is driven by the bottom. It's a bottom-up process, and it takes time, and it has to be crafted and cared for and managed, but you can do it. So tell me what you think about culture. I am happy to hear about it. Drop your comments down below. I love reading it and having discussions. And if you like this show and like what you hear, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm always happy to see it. And as always, don't forget, there is always room to have a brilliant experience.